convenience whenever they would like throughout the evening debate. So if they want to give a longer answer at the end of an answer they've given, they could say, hey, Ben, before we move on, give me one more minute. Our great organizer tonight, Craig Thorne, will be our timekeeper as well. And he'll be giving little flashcard signals to these candidates when their time is running out. But the idea here is that they'll each have 3 opportunities, candidates, and delegates, be aware of that. 3 opportunities to extend your time. You can
vacant land up to high-rise condominiums. I've also appraised entry-level homes to multi-million-dollar estates. So that's a little bit about me there. I've also managed for 22 years. So I've been a manager of different appraisal organizations at the local level, at the regional level, and at the national level. I've spent a lot of time in my career being able to develop teams and grow teams. I spent 6.5 years as the Chief Deputy Assessor for Utah County. When I was there, I worked over the residential department. I also worked over the personal property, and I handled the Board of Equalization processes, as well as the office staff. Let's see. Currently, I sit as the Vice Chair of the Appraisal Licensing and Certification Board for the state of Utah. I'm a USPAP instructor. I'm one of 3 in the state, one of 298 in the nation. Why is that important? USPAP stands for the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. These are the standards that all appraisers are held by. So by being able to teach this, I know what the standards are, I know how to follow them, and I am able to instruct. This is a national certification, so I can go anywhere and teach that. I've been teaching appraisal classes since 2000. So I've got a lot of experience in teaching and training appraisers. I've personally trained 22 appraisers from trainee to licensing. So I've had a lot of experience in doing that. Okay, I guess I should say endorsements. For me, endorsements were not a priority. I believe that everybody should make their own decision based on what they believe and what they see. So I haven't reached out for endorsements. That's just my philosophy there. I want you guys to know who I am and vote based on that. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, feels a little weird to hold the microphone to your chin, but my name is Bert Garfield. I'm currently the assessor. I was elected only a year ago, though, in a special election because the prior assessor resigned midterm, and there had to be a special election to fill the rest of that term. That term is now over. You're voting for a full term now. A little background about me. I moved to Utah County in 1980. I was only 12 years old. We moved to Provo. I went to Timpview High School. My first experience in government was in student government when I was the junior class president and had the responsibility of organizing junior prom. That was a good experience for me at 16 years old to be responsible for organizing the prom. Graduated at Timpview, went to BYU, got a degree in statistics, and served a mission. And to get through college, I had summer jobs and worked. My primary job to get through college was I worked for Provo City in landscaping, and I used to mow the lawn on Center Street, pick up trash from parks, rake leaves, and do all things in the maintenance department. Every time I drive to work, when I drive down Center Street, I think that was me. I remember mowing that lawn. After I graduated from BYU in statistics, I worked briefly at New Skin in their distribution center. My proudest moment there is that's when I learned how to drive a forklift. For some reason, I really liked that. We got married, and we've been married for 31 years. Sorry. We have 4 kids. We've raised our kids in Provo. We now live in Orem, so we've been in Utah County for a long time. After I graduated from BYU, I went to Purdue, and I got a master's degree in business, which is actually Purdue's called a Master's of Science in Industrial Administration, because Purdue is really known for their operations management program. It's in the top 5 of the nation at the time I went to it. So I came back, I started working at different companies. First started working at American Express as a statistician. Then I went to Franklin Covey. Then after a while, I decided I wanted to be an appraiser. I became an appraiser, tried to start my own business. I've been an appraiser for 18 years. You keep showing 30 seconds. I'm not sure. I'm counting down. So I wanted to start my own appraising business. It was growing great until the crash of 2007 and 8. My business died. And I thought, where could I work? And I worked at the county assessor's office and just worked my way up through hard work and became the assessor. So that's my introduction. Endorsements. I ran out of time, though. Do you want me to use it with my 1 minute?
You can use a minute, or you can leave it into a future answer.
I'll weave it into a future answer.
Okay. Thank you both. So the second question is an educational one for people in the room. Not everyone here may know what the assessor does. So tell us a little bit about what an assessor does and what you see as some of the key roles you would have as our county assessor. We'll start with Bert this time.
The assessor, we can say, is responsible for estimating the value of all property in the county upon which property taxes are based. But really, I think of it as a higher level. It's the person that's held accountable for fairness, to protect rights, that you're not overpaying on your taxes. And if assessor's not doing a good job, they're accountable to the citizens of the county. So we have to make sure we do our jobs right. So, because a fair assessment means a fair tax. Other 3 things the assessor's office does is they oversee personal property, which we can talk more about later, residential declaration forms, which we can talk more about later, and the Greenbelt program, which is a tax benefit for farmers that are producing agricultural product. The office has about 55 people in it, so it's a significant department. Is that good?
Kevin, same question. What does the assessor do with key roles?
What Bert said. It's really kind of simple. We are responsible for making sure properties are valued fairly and equitably. Equitably means not only is it right, but it's similar to all the other properties that have been valued. We also make sure that properties get the green belt, personal property. Basically, the assessor's job is to manage all of those people that actually do that. I like how Bert put it, that they are the one responsible for it. They sign the assessment roll. They're the ones that sign the roll and are there to be able to say, this is my value, and stand behind it. They've got a great team, but it's as much a management role as it is an assessor role or an appraiser role.
Our third question is, what are some of the things you would like to see happen in the assessor's office over the next 4 years? What are your plans and your priorities? And we will start with Kevin on this question.
I actually wrote them down so I didn't screw them up. Give me a second. So I have 5 things that I would like to accomplish over the next 4 years. The first is I'd like to re-implement the standards of practice. I believe this is the cornerstone of what leads to fair and equitable valuations. Without a written standard of practice, it's hard to make sure that everything is accomplished the same way across the entire county. Second, I would like to implement a training program for the appraisal staff. By doing this, I don't know, you can answer this, Bert. I don't know exactly how many appraisers there are, but there was about 25 when I was there before. So I'm going to estimate it around 25. But as a certified appraisal instructor launching this program, we can actually save $40,000 a year by training our staff ourselves. Third, make sure customer service is there. And I'm going to skip 4 and then just make sure fair and equitable assessments continue and that we work for efficiency. I want to make sure that what we're doing and what we're looking at, I want to challenge processes so that when we look at something and we can say, we are good, or no, we need to fix this.
So the 5 things I really want to start off with, and let me just tell you a little backstory. When I was elected just a year ago, I had some ideas I wanted to do. One was a significant reorganization and rewriting of job descriptions and changing the structure from being by property type, instead of by residential and commercial and the different property types. I wanted it to be by process, so from data collection to valuation. So that's been done. Well, I shouldn't say it's done. So one of the things is I'd like to finish that reorganization. There's still some job descriptions that need to be rewritten. The other thing I would like to work on are short-term rentals. Properties that are on Airbnb, Vrbo, are not being identified as well as they should be. So I'd like to institute a software program that scours those data sets, those databases, and finds those properties. And at least, we can't enforce those rules, but we can at least remove the primary residential exemption because they should not be receiving it. Another thing is a better document management system. We have a lot of paper that comes into our office. I'd like to have a more scanned, searchable document management system. And finish the training. We've set aside a new person that's overtraining and complete their training.
Thank you both. The next question is, we've got a lot of Republican delegates in the House. Let's talk about the Constitution for a second. Article 13, Section 2 of the Utah State Constitution requires that all individuals and corporations who are not entitled to exemptions should be assessed and taxed at a uniform and equal rate. What does that mean to you, and how do you assure that taxation and assessment is uniform and equal? Start with Bert.
Great question. So it's true, the Utah Constitution, I believe, is the only state constitution that requires assessments to be at fair market value. So we are required, as we swear to obey the Constitution, to monitor that. There is some suspicion that we're undervaluing commercial properties because we're very good at getting residential data because that's given to us through third-party sources, basically the real estate agent system. But commercial sales information is not made that available to us. There was a bill introduced called Senate Bill 30 that was going to require commercial brokerages to disclose their sales information so we can better value commercial properties. That didn't really go anywhere, but we did sign an agreement with commercial brokerages that they will voluntarily start giving us their data. Now, some people think that's kind of weak. Maybe we should have had a law, but we don't have the law with residential, and residential is just giving us their data. We believe that if we could get that data, we could be more accurate with our assessments. Boy, that minute goes by fast.
And all the non-growth counties, you can have time extensions if you need them.
Okay, boy.
So this goes back to the equity. You know, is it fair? Is it equitable? As we value property, we use the information we have. Bert was correct. We had a couple bills that were attempted to be passed so we could get more of that information out. It's not there yet. As we work to get that and as we work to be able to do that, we're doing the best we can to get that information. Utah is one of 13 states that's what's called a non-disclosure state. So there's a lot of talk about, well, why don't we just make us a disclosure state? There's some problems with that as well. I don't know about you, but do you want the government in control of any more of your money than I do? No. So that's one problem. You know, when I was in Washington State, they did what is called a transaction tax because it's a full disclosure state. So when I sold my house, I paid the government 3% for the right to sell my house. It's a constitutional problem here that we need to fix and make sure that we're doing that properly. Data is the key.
Next question. In your view, how should an assessor measure success? What are the metrics or key performance indicators that let you know your approach is working? Or how should you be judged? Starting with Kevin.
First step is the appeals process. If you are having a certain percentage, typically 2 to 3% appeal every year. So if your percentage is a lot higher than that, then there might be a problem with your assessments, either not being fair or not being equitable. There's two ways to appeal, fairness and equitable. Second is to make sure our process is effective and efficient. Am I having to hire more and more staff to do the same amount of work? Or are we constantly looking at what we're doing to make things better? The third thing to measure success, employees' attitudes. What are the employees doing in the office? How are they reacting? Are you able to bring other people onto the office? Is it a work environment where people want to come to work? Is it someplace where we want to go to work ourselves?
Okay, so I'm going to go through these. One is that we're under budget. Do we not spend any more money than the budget allowed? The second is, do we pass or do we deliver our work on time? All the assessments have to be done by May 22nd of every year. Did that get done? The third thing is, did we pass the sales ratio test? The sales ratio test is a statistical performance test that measures how closely our assessed values are to sold prices. And if we're not within a certain tolerances of those requirements, we fail. And then the fourth thing is an appeal rate that's a manageable number of appeals. When I started modeling the county, I'm the one that built the statistical model that valued all the homes in Utah County 14 years ago. The first time it was used, we had about 1.7% of our parcels appeal it. Now, last year, we had 0.7% of our parcels actually appeal. So we have a very reducing appeal rate. We got our budget, we're under budget, and we passed all the tests and got our work done on time.
Let's take a pause for a moment and ask the audience if we have too short of a time window for these answers. Should we give these candidates a little more time? Yes. Okay. Let's make them all 2-minute answers, every one of them. Going forward, we're going to give you a couple of minutes, candidates, because I think there's a lot to say. There's a lot of fantastic information from both candidates. We're going to give you a little more time. Did you get that, Greg? Give them 2 minutes.
2 minutes? Okay.
2 minutes on every question. This question is about, sometimes an assessor has to make tough calls. They make difficult decisions. Sometimes they have to take a member of the public up on appeal to the state tax commission, or they have to battle somebody over valuation or greenbelt status or something like that. So this is a question about management style, candidates. How do you make those difficult decisions? What's your management style? Who do you talk to? What is your guiding principle? What philosophies do you follow? Tell us how you make the tough call, starting with Bert.
That's a great question. It is an interesting thing because the county assessor has some authority. If the assessor believes that there was a decision made by maybe the county commissioners over an appeal or something like that, the assessor can appeal the decision of the commissioners to the state tax commission and try to overwrite the commissioners. So the question is, how do you make that tough choice? Really, it's this. It's fairness. Sometimes, I don't feel like holding that binder. Sometimes people come in and say, you know, could you just lower my value a little bit? Could you just give me a little bit of a haircut on my assessment? But what I think in that moment is I'm not here for this person in particular. I'm here for everybody that lives by this person. And if I reduce values just because it seems easy, I'm discounting the importance of everybody else. So when I do my decisions on what's the right decision, I think of everybody else that's not in the room. And how should they feel if their neighbor got a reduction without a justifiable reason? Now, sometimes we make mistakes. And I encourage people that if they think there's a problem with their assessment, please appeal it. We will treat you politely, professionally. We'll review all the evidence. And if there's good evidence to change it, we'll change it. But if it's unjustified and if it's unfair, we'll leave it. But still, the person that has that appeal in, if they still don't agree with the assessor's opinion, they can go request a hearing with a hearing officer who's hired by the auditor's office. The auditor's office hears the assessor's point of view, they hear the appellant's point of view, and that hearing officer then makes the decision. And then there's steps after that. But everybody gets due process, but we have to be fair with our assessments and not undervalue people just because, okay?
This goes to equity. You know, we can't make a decision based on how well we like someone or not like someone. The appeals process is set up. It's handled through the clerk or the auditor's office. They run the Board of Equalization. So when you're doing that, the process is the appellant at the first level, the taxpayer or the appellant is the one that is responsible to bring in the information to determine that there was an error. I think there's a duty and responsibility at the assessor's office, not legally, but ethically, to make sure that we didn't make a mistake. So the first process is listen. I found out if you listen to the taxpayer most of the time, you'll at least find out what they believe the problem is. You know, a lot of times it's the square footage of my house is wrong, or you've got something wrong with the characteristics of my property. So that can be there. If they disagree with the hearing officer's decision, the hearing officer actually doesn't make the decision. They make a recommendation to the commission. The commission then usually makes the decision. The commission can either accept the hearing officer's decision or say, no, I don't like that. Then it goes to the state board. And at the state, there's a hearing, there's a judge. And the judge actually makes a ruling. It's usually about 20 or 30 pages long. They're really boring to read. But if both parties do not like it there, then it goes to district court. So you can take it all the way up, depending on where yours. But as far as management, it's got to be you listen and you make sure you're fair, you're equitable, make sure you're being honest with everybody and educate. A lot of people don't understand how to value property. They don't understand what they're looking at. But as you look at it, you can help them understand, you can help educate them so that it's a fair process.
Could I add 1 minute to that?
Yep.
Okay. And I'm not disagreeing with anything, but there's something I wanted to say that I ran out of time. Assessments have to be at market value and fair. We understand that there's some people in tough situations and property taxes are a burden for them. And there's programs out there for people that can't afford their taxes. So but the assessment has to be a fair value. But if that property tax is a burden, I want people to know that there's programs out there that are low income, that have difficulty paying their taxes so that they can have tax relief, but it's not so much based on the value, but just on the taxes. Does that make sense? Okay.
Next question. In conservative Utah County, many Republican voters want to know that their government is efficient. Give us an example or two of ways you have saved money, stretched dollars, lived within a budget, or achieved success with hard work rather than endless resources. Starting with Kevin.
Well, having worked at banks for most of my career, appraisal departments and banks are the last thing anybody wants to spend money on. So there's no endless resources. They're constantly looking ways to pinch a penny and make things good. My last position at Zions Bank, I was the National Residential Review Manager. I had 15 employees that covered 14 states. It was the footprint of the Bancorp. We were able to reduce that staff to 8. And what we did is we looked at the processes. We looked at ways that we could implement a standardized process across all of the states where the Bancorp lent money. We made sure that the reviews were quality reviews. We lowered the review time from 3 days to 1 day by reducing the staff in half. You say the math is backwards, but it's simple. It's about process. It's about procedure. It's about making sure that everything is done fairly. It's done right. As you do this and you look at the processes that you have in place, you have to constantly question yourself and say, why do we do it that way? Is there a better way to do this? I had a manager that used to always say, if it's working, break it, make it work better. And I thought, you're crazy. And then as I learned what he was trying to say is you can't always sit back and say, good is good enough. You have to look for ways to do it better.
So when I studied at statistics at BYU, my actual emphasis in the program was called statistical process control, which is all about process management. And it was about efficiencies. So that's in my background, my framework for efficiencies. Here's a few things that we've done that are more efficient. Number one, when I built the statistical model that valued all the homes in Utah County 14 years ago, it worked great. It was groundbreaking at the time. But by the time it would run, it would take about 2 to 3 months before you could do the whole county. Well, I knew there's got to be a better way. So instead of hiring more appraisers at the assessor's office, we started hiring data scientists and statisticians. And they started looking what I gave one of them the model I built 14 years, and I go, is there a way you can make this better? Because taking 2.5 months roughly to do all the county takes just too long of their time window. And he said, yeah. And by the way, he said, what you built 14 years ago was really innovative. But he got that down to 1 week. We can now do all the homes in Utah County in 1 week. Also, he built a model based on he and I talking that values all the condos, twin homes, townhomes in a week. So we have reduced the processing time, which allows space on both sides of the modeling, because we now have more times for permitting, picking up data. We have more times for double checking on the back end of that. So also, we had another thing we did. When there's an appeal that comes in, we basically have to do like a mini appraisal. Well, it was fine, we were doing that. But what we built with this new group is an app. All they do is type in a parcel number. It gives them a list of comparables that they can use in their appraisal. The appraiser clicks the comps that he or she thinks are the best, boom, an appraisal is done. We reduced our appeal time by 30% with that app.
There are people here tonight that want to hear if these candidates have courage and real backbone. They want to know if you've been able to stand up to people and fire them, if you've been able to make unpopular decisions in the interest of the public. Tell us about some times you've done that or something that proves you've got a backbone. Starting with Bert.
That's a good question. I think the fact that we're both here means we have courage. We are putting ourselves out there. We are running for public office. We're both formidable opponents, and we are going at it. As far as standing up for what we believe in, we have at times decided to appeal the decisions of our county commissioners to the state tax commission. As they looked me in the eye and said, I hope you don't do that, I did it. Now, more often than not, when it went to the state tax commission, we won at the state tax commission. Sometimes we didn't, but I promise you this, we were never argumentative over it. It was always about, what do we want to do? What's the right thing to do? We had one parcel the other day that they have a certain part of their parcel that's in urban farming. And we got down to a debate. Does the driveway that makes them drive into their shed count as urban farming space, or is that residential space? Now, there's a difference of opinion. So we debated it with the state tax commission. The state tax commission ruled on it, and we fully accept it. It clarified some things. So we have at times gone over the heads of our county commissioners. Sometimes we don't, sometimes we do. When the situation warrants it, we feel inclined to do that because that's the right thing to do.
So I believe the clarifying question was, have you ever been able to fire someone, or have you ever stood up? So let me tell you a story. I'll keep it short. When I was first an appraiser, I was trained by two individuals. One's name was Rick. Rick was a great appraiser, but he got lazy as his career went on. As it turns out, I became Rick's manager. Now, Rick had trained me to be an appraiser. And for those that have become appraisers, it's a long process. Okay. But he was no longer doing his job. So it was my job to take this individual and to reorganize his thoughts and help him understand how to become a better appraiser or have him find another job. So it took us 4.5 months. We worked on this weekly. We worked on it daily. And the hardest drive I've ever had to do was when I drove Rick home, because he no longer wanted to be an appraiser. So when I say that, it was the toughest thing I've ever had to do. Because when you look at somebody and say, I'm taking your livelihood away, and I'm doing this because you no longer want to do it, that's a challenge. I serve on the State Licensing and Certification Board. There are many times that we have hearings and things where we have to stand up, where appraisers come before us and they've not done the right things. That's why they're before the board. And you listen to the hearing, you listen to the judges, and you have to rule based on the facts of the case, what's happened. And when you rule on that and you say yes or no, that's where it becomes a challenge. The most we've ever fined somebody is $28,000. Keep in mind, a residential appraiser is paid somewhere between $400 and $500 in appraisal. We find this guy nearly a month's worth of work for the things that he had done wrong with several assignments. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Next question is, one challenge the county departments have is finding and attracting real quality employees. Appraisers are expensive. What plans do you have? What strategies will you use to attract and to retain talent in the assessor's office? Starting with Kevin.
So it's always been a challenge. Nobody likes to go to work for something less than what they think they're worth. And the assessor's office is always underpaying. So what do? How do you make it attractive to people to come and work for you? How do you make people want to come there? You offer things that they can't get somewhere else. You offer them stability. We had the same problem when I worked for the banks. Okay, we didn't pay what market appraisers get paid. We paid less, we paid under. So really the government and the banks run on the same model. But what you're looking for is you look for somebody that wants stability. You look for somebody that wants training. They want to learn, they want to grow. And you can offer that through growth, through learning. We have a great retirement system, so you offer that as a benefit. You sell the benefits, you sell what you've got, and you attract those people that fit that model. When you're looking for people, you have to understand who you're looking for. You're not looking for those that are wanting to be paid the most in the world. Let them go find someplace else. But there are good people at the county that are willing to work there. There are good people at banks that work at banks. Not for the money, but it's more than about the money. It's about the environment. It's about what I get out of this job. What do I get in terms of how can I grow professionally? How can I grow personally? And how can I make a difference with what I do? You know, when you are able to show somebody that they're making a difference in people's lives in the community, that's a lot worth it to a lot of people. It's not about the cash, but it's about what you do.
So we had kind of an interesting few years ever since interest rates were down to like 2.75%. We were trying to hire appraisers, but there was so much appraising work out there with people buying homes and people refinancing their homes. They were busier than they could handle. So it was difficult for us to recruit appraisers in our office. We hire people that want to become appraisers, and we're promising them that we'll train them up, and that's why we have a fully dedicated appraiser trainer. But something's changed recently. Now that interest rates are more like 7% and home prices are high, now we're getting appraisers that are seasoned and well-experienced that want to come and work for the assessor's office. It was simply a time when they were making so much money outside that they didn't want to take a pay cut. But now that that's slowed down, now we have people that are interested in working for the office. But it's true. The people that want to come and work at the assessor's office, some of them have it for a civic duty. They feel like a civic responsibility. Some do it for the stability. Simply just having health insurance is a big plus. So at the moment, we are getting decent appraisers applying for our jobs, and it's kind of become competitive. So it was just a weird time with the way things were for the last few years, but it seems to have kind of stabilized.
I'll be using it.
Okay. Extra minute for Kevin.
So the appraisal industry goes in cycles. They go in cycles of where it's really hot and, you know, it's hard to hire an appraiser to where it's really cold. And we've seen these cycles happen time and time again. So the biggest challenge is to remember, what am I hiring for? Because when it gets hot again, you don't want everybody to leave to go out back in the field. So that's why hiring the right person at that right time, so you can find out what is their core values, what are they looking for. When we did that at the banks, we found that the biggest thing was for stability. It was for what we could offer via training. It was the amenities that came with the job, not just the pay. So looking for the right person to hire, even in good times, is still a key indicator.
Okay, it's Bert's turn to go first again. I'm going to look at a couple of different questions. We've got several questions from people tonight, and we had a question earlier about what does the assessor do? There are a lot of people that seem like they want to better understand how assessment works, what assessors do. So we're going to ask a little bit of a follow-up question on that one. I'll just read a couple of these. I believe when values rise, tax rates should go down to keep taxes the same. Why is that not the case? How and what influences do you have on this? Or how are property taxes assessed? So take another 2 minutes and give us a little more tutorial. I think there are folks that are still craving to know how exactly is it modeled, how is it done, what do you do, how do we figure out this tax assessment, what happens? Bert.
You might be sorry you asked. So there is a process there's two steps really to the process, is determine the tax rate and then applying the tax. So the tax rate is actually adjusted every year. Some people think the tax rate's fixed and it just stays there. But the equation for calculating the tax rate is in the numerator, you have the the tax revenue for that taxing entity from last year over the total taxable value in that taxing entity minus the new construction in that area. So what that does is it basically gives the taxing entity, like the school district or whoever it is, the same amount of money they got last year, except for what was added by new growth. Does that make sense? So, oh, I've got to finish my equation. So once that's the tax rates calculated, then the new construction and the is added back in, and then the tax rates multiplied by that aggregated value. So the question is why do my taxes go up? Well, if any taxing entity, like the Alpine School District, goes through a process called truth in taxation, they can request more money than they got last year, besides just what's been gained through new construction. So really, taxes go up because a taxing entity went through the truth in taxation process. The county assessor's office actually is a separate line item in your tax. And there hasn't been a truth in taxation process for the assessor's office in like a decade. We are half the tax rate we were 10 years ago. We have the lowest assessing tax rate of Weber County, Davis County, Salt Lake County, and Washington County, all comparable counties. The tax rate for the assessor's line is actually the lowest, yet we're the fastest growing county in the state.
Remember, the assessor's job is to set market value. So as values rise, so the other question is, so why do my taxes always keep going up if we're supposed to have this equation that works so fantastically? I like to explain it like this. We have this tax pie. And this pie is what we refer to as the amount of money that the entities get to collect every year. And then they add new growth onto that. Well, each year we have our own slice of the tax pie. If our value raises 5% and everybody else's value goes down 2%, we get a larger portion of that tax pie for ourselves and our taxes go up. Okay, so it's not only about the total value and that going up, it's about how your value of your property is sliding up and down in comparison to all the other properties that are in your taxing entity. It's not even your tax district, but each taxing entity, school districts, cities, all of them. There's a ton of them. Anyway, so it depends on, you have to look at that whole circle that fills in that tax pie to find out, is everything going up 5%? Good, that means we did a great job in valuation last year and we were able to float it and say, yep, we went up 5%. But if for some reason your property was out of sync with the market, then you may get a greater share of the tax pie.
We're lucky that we've got experts willing to do this kind of work, these complicated things. Thanks. Thanks for both those answers. Give us some examples of ways that you work with or would like to work with other elected officials. I see other elected officials and candidates for elected office here tonight. It's important in the county that elected officials work together. How would you work with other elected officials to meet the statutory deadlines and duties that are mandated by the legislature for a county assessor? Kevin.
Well, we work a lot with the recorder's office, the commissioners, the treasurer's office, not so much, but basically with the recorder's office, we're trying to work with them to find out what the parcels are. When I was there before, there was always errors in parcels and legal descriptions and things to look for. So just simply going and saying, hey, take a look at this one. Let me know what we've got because it appears that there's an error. There's recorded deed descriptions that come across that aren't quite right. Working with the commissioners, what do we need to do? Commissioners set our budgets. So even though we have our own line item for taxes, the commissioners actually give us the budget because our line item is for assessing and collecting is what the line item says. So as we do that, we work with the commissioners to find out budgets. we look to see what we need to do and what we need to prioritize with the commissioners. So it's best just to work with them, find out what their needs are, what they need, and, be a resource for them. When the commissioners are handling Board of Equalization, we're their eyes and ears. What's the property truly worth? What is it? Is it something that we need to raise, lower? What are the issues with it? What did the hearing officer say that was good or bad? And be able to refute what that is. So that's how you work with the commissioners. I don't know, there's lots of elected officials. You just play nice in the sandbox with the other people.
That's a great question. I forgot to mention endorsements. I have endorsements from several of the elected officials in the county government. And I won't want to spend a lot of my time on that, but I work well with the other elected officials. The recorder's office is like the first step. That's when a parcel gets created. The parcel comes into the assessor's office. The assessor's office has to figure out what's being built on that. What's it made out of? What's the quality of that construction? Then that goes into the database, and then it comes in the front door as just a parcel, goes out the back door as a fully assessed property. Other things with the assessor's office is we have a good working relationship with all the elected officials. It's kind of interesting because in a way we don't want to be too involved with their work. They have their responsibility. I have my responsibility. We work together, but we respect each other's independence and to be able to manage. They each manage their office in the way that they want to. I don't really have any influence how they want to move it. They manage their office. But we have good rapport. We have, if we have situations where there's a data error or something happened in a certain parcel or a personal property, I have a relationship with the treasurer and he just points it out to me and we work it out. There's no finger pointing. It's just, let's just fix this kind of situation. So I know there's some controversies between some of the elected officials right now. I'm happy to report that I have a good rapport with all the elected officials. I try to not get involved in their issues, but I work well with each one of them.
And now let's come to our final question, which is really just to give us your closing comments, closing arguments. What else did you want to tell us that you didn't get a chance to say? Why should we vote for you? And you've got, both candidates have 2 extra 1-minute extensions because they didn't do a lot of rebuttals or extensions during the debate. So with those extra 2 minutes, you each have up to 4 minutes if you want to use it for your final answer, closing comments, closing argument.
Thank you. So there's one other thing I wanted to mention, and that's this sales ratio study. I hate to get too technical, but there's a measurement on how good the assessed values are, and it's called the coefficient of dispersion. The lower the number, the closer the assessed values are to sold prices. By law, the coefficient of dispersion has to be below 10%. When I first started at the assessor's office, we were about 8 or 9%. But with data fixing, data correction, improved statistical modeling, we got that down to about 6%. That doesn't seem like that big a deal, maybe, but we noticed a strong correlation. When we were more and more precise with our data, we had a reduction in the number of people that actually appealed their value, which makes me think that we're making progress. We're getting really good, accurate assessments. So, so in conclusion, it's an interesting situation. I've only been in the assessor's office for a year. Before then, I was the chief deputy assessor for 7 years. I've been in that department for the last 14 years. I have seen when we used to have 160,000 parcels that were taxed. Now we have 225,000 parcels that are taxed. The average parcel used to be $200,000 a parcel. Now it's $600,000 a parcel. I have seen that progression. I have seen all the things that have happened. I have seen the growth. I have managed to it. So I have a lot of experience in that office. So I guess it's kind of like you're my employer. And in some sort of weird situation, I'm up for an appraisal review, a performance review after 1 year in office. And how did I do? So this is your question. Well, we're under budget. We delivered our work on time. We passed all of our statistical tests, and we have a pretty low appeal rate. Not that many people have a problem with their assessments, despite the fact they're so high. But they think it's about right. So my question is, as you're my boss, have I met your expectations? Or have I even exceeded your expectations for only being the assessor for 1 year? So I ask that you let me continue on. I have plans I want to work on. I couldn't accomplish everything I wanted to in 1 year, but we accomplished a lot. My question is, will you support me and vote for me for a full term? Thank you.
So for me, it always goes back to process. So Bert and I have worked in the assessor's office together. So when we talk about how we've increased the appeals, how we looked at this. When I was there before, we wrote a standards of practice model, and we put that together. That's in place, but it's no longer used. I don't know why it's not used, but it's not there. It's only a matter of time before things start going awry. Without a written standards of practice in the office, what's happening? Why is this important? When you look at how things are done, Bert's right, you have to have clean data. Because if you don't have clean data and you're sticking it into the model, you don't get clean things out. Okay, so clean in, clean out. So your standard of practice helps you develop that clean in, so that the model can do its job. So we need a standard of practice. We need to make sure that the people are properly and adequately trained. I'm glad they hired a full-time trainer. What's their background? What are they looking for? How do they teach? How do they train? How do they develop? The thing that is most concerning, we train a lot of appraisers from the assessor's office. The reason being is because we pay so low. Okay, and so that's typically a place that we can train, we can teach, we can build that rapport with those people there. Right now, we can bring staff in that are certified appraisers, but how do we teach? How do we train? How do we develop those people so that they stick? How do we help them become better? I'm not saying Bert's done a terrible job. I think he's done a great job. I just want to do better. And I can do better because of my experience, not only at the assessor's office, but in the corporate world. I've been able to look at process. I've been able to look at things that are done in other areas, be able to make the hard choices, the hard decisions, and move teams and people forward. I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming tonight. Have a great night.
I'm hopeful that both of these candidates can stick around for a little while longer. They may want to respond to comments or give you more information or speak to a lot of other questions that you may have that we didn't have time to ask. Thank you for coming tonight. Thank you again to these two great candidates. Let's give them one more round of applause. And feel free to stick around and talk if you'd like, or if you have to get somewhere, feel free to head out. Thank you again for being here. Gentlemen,
Thank you.
nice job.
Thanks, Bert.
Thanks, Ben.
As much as I can.
That'd be great. Yeah. I know. I'm afraid to just go on the data and now we can walk. So you get the same like how can we process the model? So the reason there are three different ways to evaluate property. One's the market approach. That's the model.